So, this just happened last night, and I still can't believe someone would do this. I'm a 30 male and a paramedic. I've been in EMS for the past 8 years, and I absolutely love my job. Last night, we were dispatched to a 75-year-old female who fell at home. The patient stated that she tripped over her carpet and hit her head when she fell. We arrived on the scene and noticed that the home was a duplex with our patient's door on the right and her neighbor's door on the left. We made our way into the home and found her lying on the floor. The woman was awake and breathing. We started asking her the standard questions. Are you okay? Does anything hurt? Do you remember the fall? Etc. She stated that she has a pounding headache and that she remembers walking to bed and then waking up on the floor. In my field, that's a pretty big red flag. We noticed that she's got a pretty good lump on the side of her head and a big bruise starting to form already. Noticing the bruise, I asked her if she was on any blood thinners. She said that she was on blood thinners for a previous stroke she had a few years ago. We urged her to let us take her to the hospital because there was a possibility that the fall could have caused a bleed in her brain, and she should go to the hospital to get some scans done. She agrees, and we begin to package her up. We applied a C-collar around her neck in case of any C-spine injuries. She denied any neck or back pain, so we lifted her up and placed her on our stair chair. A stair chair is exactly what it sounds like. It's a chair with tracks that we use to carry patients up and down stairs. As we were getting her out of the house, her neighbor whipped the door open and started yelling about how she couldn't sleep with all the lights and noises outside. The sound of the stair chair apparently woke her up, and she was not happy about that. My lieutenant walked over to her and apologized and said that we were dealing with a medical emergency and that we would be leaving soon enough. The Karen neighbor then noticed that our patient was her neighbor, and that's when she started yelling about something totally different. The entitled neighbor started yelling, "You can't take her to the hospital. I have errands to run tomorrow, and she needs to watch my kids." My lieutenant again reiterated that we were here for a medical emergency and that her health is more important than her errands. The entitled neighbor let out a loud huff and then slammed the door in his face. We thought that was the end of it. We were wrong. After a few minutes in the back of the ambulance, we told our lieutenant that he could take the engine crew back to the station and that we were going to be heading out in a few minutes. After we checked her vitals, got an IV going, and started giving her IV fluids, my partner got out of the back and went up to the driver's seat. About 5 seconds later, the back doors of my ambulance fly open, and who do I see? The entitled neighbor, of course. Apparently, she needed a few minutes to get dressed before coming outside. I yell at her, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She yells back, "I told you that she can't go to the hospital because she has to watch my kids tomorrow." She then starts trying to pull the cot out of the ambulance with our patient on it. Luckily, she didn't know how to unlatch the cot and couldn't get her out. Our patient says, "I can't watch your kids tomorrow because I fell, and I might be having a stroke." The entitled neighbor yells back at her and says, "You're fine. You don't need to go to the hospital because you're not having a stroke." My partner then hears the commotion and goes to the back of the ambulance. He pulls her off the cot, and I slam and lock the doors. You could tell that the entitled neighbor was about to become combative. It's important to know that either the police department or the sheriff's department responds to our calls, too, when it's at night. Because of where we were, it took a few minutes for the sheriff's department to show up on scene, but he got there just in time. I couldn't hear much through the door, but I saw the officer get out of whose cruiser with his taser drawn. My partner runs back up to the driver's seat and starts heading to the hospital. The last thing I saw through the back windows was the entitled neighbor stomping towards the officer, and then her hitting the ground after being tased. I was talking with my patient and asked what that was all about, and she said that the entitled neighbor will just drop her 3 young kids off at her house and leave for several hours at a time with no notice. My patient had no idea that she was supposed to watch the kids at all because, again, the entitled neighbor never even gives her a heads up about these things. Like I said in the beginning, this happened last night, so I don't have any updates, but I'll post an update when I learn more. Small update. My contact at the hospital said that the patient does not have a bleed. She does, however, have a really nasty-looking bruise on her face from the blood thinners. She will most likely be going home soon. There is no update on the neighbor. I probably will not hear anything back until my next shift day. Update. Hey everyone, sorry for the late update. Unfortunately, it's not as exciting as some of you would hope for. So, I got in touch with the officer on that call, and he said that the woman was not formally charged with anything. The patient is back home now and resting comfortably. Like I said before, the hospital found no signs of a bleed, and she was discharged the next day. She was advised to file for an order of protection from the neighbor, but I don't believe I will ever be privy to that information unless something happens again. I read a majority of the comments, and most people are saying to contact Elder Abuse and DCFS. The only problem with filing those reports is having concrete proof. We never actually saw any children, so we can't really say that they are abused or neglected at all. We can say that we have a suspicion, But for all we know, they could be living their best lives at home with the entitled parent. If the entitled parent had left and abandoned her kids, then that's another story. Calling DCFS without any signs of child abuse and just working off hearsay can just cause more problems if the accusations are unfounded. The same can pretty much be applied about the elder abuse. We have no actual proof of elder abuse occurring. The entitled neighbor was not involved in the actual fall, and there was no suspicion for any kind of financial, physical, emotional, or social abuse. The way our patient talked about the kids getting dumped on her was in more of an inconsiderate way, and not in an abusive way. Long story short, the entitled neighbor was just kind of an asshole. I am, however, hoping that the patient press charges for assault, but I don't know if she will. If I hear anything more, I'll post another update. Story 2. My dad threw a fit because everyone was complimenting the cake my 9-year-old daughter baked on her birthday instead of paying attention to him. My daughter had her 9th birthday last week. Since she was very young, she accompanied me in nearly everything I did. As I like to cook and bake, she also had already plenty of experience with helping by making various dishes and cakes. For her last birthday, however, she wanted to go first time all solo, meaning I was to sit and wait in case she had a question, but everything else was her. She was incredibly proud, and so was I, from picking the recipe, measuring, mixing, etc. The only thing I did was pull it out of the oven. She then proceeded to make the frosting and decorate the cake again all by herself. Needless to say, everybody was very proud of her, and she was really looking forward to share her cake with the family and chip in with everyone about her process. My mom is a baker also, and she heavily complimented my daughter, how wonderful the cake looked and tasted, and soon all of us will be coming to daughter for advice. Daughter was glooming with joy. Everybody complimented daughter as the cake was indeed delicious and beautiful. That was apparently too much for my dad, who started to get increasingly fuzzy. First off, he started his "maybe you are trying to poison us with this" jokes, and I shushed him. Then when everybody asked daughter about how she did it, he got louder and louder, interrupting her to tell us all that he is also capable of making cake. His cakes will always taste better. It wasn't even a difficult cake, etc. Every time somebody else told him to be quiet, as it was daughter's moment. So he waited to let the stupid cake talk pass and then started interrupting every conversation that followed just to make it all about him. When that failed, he got louder and talked with increased volume so he would be heard. He even kind of pounded when she opened her presents, as nobody asked what he thought of the presents. So yeah, dear people of Reddit, that is my dad, trapped in the body of a 65-year-old man with the mind of a bratty 3-year-old. Edit. I am sorry I cannot reply to everyone individually, but here it is evening and I am busy getting dinner done, etc. One thing I wanted to point, however, is, yes, my dad has been like this all his life. I remember when I was in elementary school, my teachers picked me out for a gifted kids program. My dad had me for weeks on end look through his university notes to show me how much better his understanding of maths was in university compared to first grader me. Hence prove I am not at all more gifted than he was and is. Sorry for my not native speaker English BTW. And I have to say sorry, my phone fell into my youngest trusting hands that day and she decided to help mommy by cleaning it up. So we have no pictures that day and the cake was eaten up instantly. Story 3. My entitled neighbor was mad that I took my shirt off of in my own house. So Wednesday I was sick, I had a fever and just felt really bad, so I was spending most of the day lying in bed, but around noon I moved to the living room couch cause it was getting really hot in my room and it was cool in the living room. And some context, our living room is filled with large windows that point to the street in my neighbor's house. So I went to the couch and I still felt hot, so I took off my shirt. At that point I was only wearing short shorts and my bra. So I was laying down for a few minutes when there was a knock on the door and my mom went to go answer it. The living room is right next to the door, so it wasn't hard to hear the conversation. So my mom opened the door and the neighbor, who we'll call Karen, was there and said, "Hi Susan, how are you doing? I came over to tell you to tell your daughter to cover up." My mom then reasonably said, "Excuse me," to which Karen replied, "Yes, it's kind of disgusting what she's doing, exposing herself like that." My mom, now a bit less patient, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you could tell me what to do with my kids in my house." Karen then replied, "Oh no, that's not what I'm trying to do, it's just that my husband's office is right across your windows and it's hard for him to concentrate on work when there's a naked teen on the other side of his window." My mom, just about as dumbfounded as I was at this point, told Karen, "Okay, 3 things. First, my daughter's not naked. And even if she was, it wouldn't matter because she lives here and she can wear whatever she wants. Second, what is your husband, a 45-year-old man, doing looking at my 17-year-old daughter in her underwear? And third, get off my property because we're done here." And with that, my mom slammed the door in Karen's face. We haven't heard from them since then, and on Friday my mom bought curtains for the living room windows. So yeah, that was my encounter with our neighbors, and I'm not sure where to go from here.